other things by military means, but not only by military means. Now, if I apply, as I applied in my book, The Ethnic Cleansing of Palestine, if I apply this complex concept of ethnic cleansing to the case of Palestine, I am using a concept that has, of course, far-reaching moral, political, and not just legal implications. And for that, I needed to go back to the early years of Zionism and to end with Israeli policies today. In fact, what I would like to argue, and I try to argue in my book, is that this paradigm is not just a prism through which we can understand what Israel did in 1948, but this is a paradigm which should help us understand Zionist policies in the late 19th century when the movement appeared for the first time, and it should help us understand Israeli policies today in 2007. Let me begin in the beginning, and then I'll move slowly, chronologically until today, to show how, to my mind, ethnic cleansing is a fitting paradigm for understanding Zionism and later the state of Israel's policy towards the indigenous population in Palestine. Zionism emerged out of two very noble motives, I think, as an ideological movement in the late 19th century. One impulse was to find a safe haven for the Jews. And one could even argue there was some foresight among the founding fathers of Zionism when they believed that the attempt of Jews in Europe to assimilate would not only fail, but could result even in the elimination of the Jews. This was a noble, when I talk about noble impulse here, I think the idea of saving a group of people from a very dramatic and drastic fate was definitely something every person could identify with. There was a less noble, but not less positive motivation that underlined the Zionist ideology in its early stages, and this was redefining Judaism as a national movement. It's not surprising that 2 or 3 decades after the Spring of Nations in 1848, also Jewish groups, especially secular Jewish groups, thought that Judaism was not just a religious identity, but also could be reinvented, if you want, as a national identity. And as this was definitely going around Central and Eastern Europe at the time, it's not surprising that a lot of assimilated and secular Jews thought that this could help them find a place in the changing world of the second half of the 19th century. But the moment a formula emerged that the only way of implementing these two noble impulses or motivation was by creating a Jewish state in Palestine, the moment this emerged as a formula, Zionism turned from a project for saving Jews or a national project of redefining Judaism as a national movement into a colonialist project. And that a colonialist project is associated with ethnic cleansing should not surprise anyone. It was not the only colonialist project we know of that involved ethnic cleansing and removing by force populations from one place to the other. The amazing thing is that in 2007, such a claim, to me very elementary, a very reasonable claim, that the moment Zionism was territorialized, namely that the idea of implementing these two noble impulses on the land of Palestine emerged, Zionism became a colonialist project. The only amazing part of the story is that if you say such a thing in 2007, you are immediately branded as a radical. In Israel, you are immediately branded as an enemy of the state. In Oxford, I hope this is not the case. But nonetheless, it's still a very radical position to take. Surprisingly, if you think about it. I mean, there's nothing in the history of Palestine and Zionism, at least at that period of the late 19th century, that can refute the fact that there was an indigenous native population and there was a movement of Europeans for noble or not noble reasons that wanted to colonize the land. Hence, it was a colonialist project. And try and start a talk in an American university under the title Zionism as Colonialism. I'm going to try it the day after tomorrow in New Mexico. I can't tell you beforehand, but I expect that this is not going to pass very quietly. In fact, I was told that half of the people cancelled when I changed in the last moment the title, which is Zionism as Colonialism. It immediately, of course, conveys the message of an ideological position, a very radical, almost a self-hating Jewish position in my case, or if Pappe would have given such a talk, an anti-Semitic one, which is also being very wrong given your origins. In any case, this was in fact what happened in the late 19th century. The moment, and it doesn't matter right now for what reasons, but the moment Palestine was chosen, and there were good reasons for choosing Palestine from a Jewish point of view, the moment Palestine was chosen as the venue for implementing the project that should save Jews and redefine Judaism as a national movement, Zionism did not only become a colonialist project, it became a colonialist project that had to develop an idea of an ethnic cleansing. Until the 1930s, the leaders of the Zionist movement were too preoccupied with survival, with questions of survival. They were a very small community of settlers, and they did not succeed in alluring too many Jews to Palestine. Their colonization project was very limited in its space, but it was enough to create animosity and antagonism from the local Palestinian population. And hence, I don't think they had much time to deal with the practical implications of the idea of, or the connection between ethnic cleansing and the creation of a Jewish state in the land of Palestine. In fact, in the 1930s, when for the first time the leaders of the Zionist movement, and particularly the leader of the Zionist movement, David Ben-Gurion, felt that Zionism had built a solid base in Palestine, and for the first time concrete ideas of what should be the fate of the local population were discussed in this context. Ethnic cleansing was not the only means brought forward by the Zionist leadership to deal with the problem of the existence of a native population in the coveted future Jewish state. One means that was promised by the energetic members of the Zionist leadership that were busy trying to buy lands was that in due course, because of the very special land ownership regime in Palestine, which inherited the Ottoman land regime, they promised David Ben-Gurion that in due course they would be able to buy much of the land. There were many absentee landlords who didn't live in Palestine. There was a lot of money on the on the Zionist side, and they felt that there was eagerness, at least among the landowners, to sell land and make a profit, and therefore they hoped that by buying land, they would expand the space, if you want, the Zionist space in Palestine. This was a total failure, by the way, despite the fact that there were absentee landlords that did sell land to the Jews. There were Palestinian notables who sold land to the Jews. At the end of the day, less than 6% of the land of Palestine was sold to the Jews. So this means was a total failure. There was a dovish, one could say, more flexible wing of the Zionist leadership that said to the main leadership, let's negotiate over this space. There's no need to ethnically cleanse anyone. Let's negotiate, maybe partitioning the land into two spaces, maybe get a peace agreement that would allow the Zionist presence in Palestine to become an accepted fact in the Arab world at large and in Palestine in particular. These talks that were tried in the 1930s did not lead anywhere. One has to take that also into account. And therefore, the way forward, as probably David